And all of a sudden, the man says, okay, and he takes me and he puts me aboard a ship. It was a small ship. Well, you'd say it's a pretty good-sized ship, but it was relatively small. And he said, do you know the command? I looked at it and said, gee, I don't. Well, I'm fairly new in the Navy, but I don't know the commands, the official command. So he asked me to bring this thing into a dock, and it's about going from here to the fourth house. Oh, it's maybe 300 yards. So I take it in, but I check everything. I don't, if you said there's something left, I'm going to look at it. I want to look at it. So my instructions were to take this in, but I'm looking everywhere to see what else is there. Because I don't know, every once in a while people say, well, let's see, I checked that. You checked what? No, you made a mistake. You didn't see it all. So I checked every goddamn thing that they said, and I brought it in to the dock. Now, call the commands, I took it out, bring it in again. And the important thing is, everything that happens, I check it, if possible. And so that made me, I didn't realize that, but then they selected me, and they have two men marking, and one there and one back, and they do, and they selected me as one of the people. And we didn't know what we were being selected for. And then when they finished that, then they decided that I would be a good pilot. And the other man actually came from Worcester. And it was just so coincidental that we both came from Worcester.
So they said you would make a good pilot because you were diligent and you would check things multiple times?
Right, that's how I was selected.
Wow.
Here's my pilot certificate.
Yes.
This proved that I went to...
How long did it take? How long was the training to become the pilot?
Well, I think in modern time they'd probably say 8 months, but I think we had about 2 months.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
I had to grab everything, and then most of it was taken aboard.
Wow.
You know, while you're waiting.
Mm-hmm. As you experience it, you're learning.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's a lot of experiences that I had. Different circumstances and all.
Mm.
But it was kind of interesting.
How long were you in the service?
I think 4 years.
4 years?
I'm sure it was 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And then was that before you went to Holy Cross, or did you go to Holy Cross afterwards?
Well, I went to Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm.
When I finished, I went to the College of Pharmacy.
Ah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also, that used to be 3 years, but they increased it to 4. So as I'm a freshman, they 4 years. So I had to go to 4 years.
Ah.
And when I finished the 3rd year, they told me they sent to Washington or something, wherever the thing, and they said no, they want them to finish.
Oh.
So I didn't get a degree. However, after the war, I went and I got a second degree.
Okay.
It was kind of the in-between schooling.
Right. So the war stopped your...
Right. Now it says that the orders to me is Assistant Port Director to William T. Shea, so he gave me the orders. This will be at the end of Iron Dock at 14:20 today. It will lay off Homehound tomorrow, at which time it will be going alongside an APD whose estimated time is 0500 to return upon completion of this part of the mission. Upon the LTA arrival, signal the arrival and purpose and requested to order the APD to lay off Homehound Island upon its arrival, 0500.
Oh.
The Indianapolis is down.
Yeah.
It's down in the water, gone. And these are several days afterwards. I don't know if this shows it or not. Probably
It was
not.
August 4th that you were sent, right? August 4th, that's what your paper says?
Yeah, this is August 3rd, so it'll be August 4th.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's the next morning. And you, 10 doctors, 50 Coleman, and will board the APD. It has 200 survivors, 90% of whom are casualty. When the AV is close to notify its arrival by old signal, you will bring the APD in to our Keyline. It is important you move the ship at this particular time. By 4:12, we'll be waiting to go alongside. So those are to the barges. They had them down, and they had it lengthened out because in wartime you don't have a bridge to cross. You just go across, but they don't have them, so they have to makeshift. And so it is important because 4 barges will be waiting to go alongside, in which the survivors will be discharged. And so they have the convenient way, because you don't have the depth of water. That's the idea. You can't just go, like we can't get down Lake Quincy. We're looking at the water and say, well, just bring it in. How can you go deep? So they have the barges out there, so then any ship that comes in can move them in. I mean, you have to think of all these things ahead of time. So anyway, so I was on the ship LCD with all these doctors and Coleman. The main ship contacts them. It's black night, and you have to meet and make sure you're meeting with the right company. So they asked the captain of the ship, said, "Who are you?" And they identify themselves. And then after they identify this, they come back and they say, well, we have 10 doctors and 50 corpsmen here. We'll board your ship. And he answered them. He says, we don't need the doctors or the corpsmen. Do you have a pilot aboard? And they said, yes, and I'm the pilot. Mm-hmm. So now they brought them up, and they asked that we bring them to the aft end, so they come down to get close. And as soon as they get close, I'm ready to jump. And it was about the table length. Now, all below it, is just ocean. So I run and I jump in the air, and they have 4 men there, So they grabbed me, and I don't know where they grabbed, but I could feel every hand, and they put me down on the ship. And that's the story. Now, there's nowhere. I think I have a book, and it does mention that I was the pilot by name, and so anyway, that's the end of that.
So then, where did the survivors end up? Where did they land?
All the people,
Yeah.
our people.
Yeah.
They were in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
All the men were just right now. If you were here, I was here. They all were crowded around there. These guys are looking for land. Mm-hmm. They've never been on it now for days, seeing nothing but water. Mm-hmm. They were so glad to find land.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the minute they get in,
Wow. There's a piece in here that talks about the rescue in this book, Left for Dead, and just how joyous people were to see, planes flying above because they were going to be rescued. And it's a really powerful piece in the book that I think resonates with your story because you were one of the people that helped save the surviving crewmen. Here's just a little excerpt I'll read for you. Kozel Smith saw a plane circling overhead. It circled for a long time, flying low over the water. Finally, it dropped a package into the water about 300 yards off. He wondered whether or not he had the strength to swim to it, but he knew he wouldn't last another night where he was. He set off, his damaged hand useless as a hand, but somewhat useful as a paddle. His injury made for slow going as the waves came toward him, pushing him back, and the wind blew his face. He swam for what seemed like eternity. At last, he touched the package. It was a 2-man raft. It was upside down. He finally caught a wave that flipped over the raft. But he was too tired to climb in, so he simply hung on for an hour, resting. He was alone. He saw airplanes circling overhead. He gave it one more try, found the strength, pulled himself up over the edge, onto the raft, and collapsed. So that's a story from a survivor.
that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
Did you ever meet any of the survivors afterwards, or no?
No.
Had no connection with them.
No. Mm-hmm.
No connection.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. Why do you think it is important for students to be educated on this time in U.S. history? Why do you think the Indianapolis was an important piece of historical information for, American people to know about?
Well, it was a very important thing in the whole picture of the whole war. It was a great ship, all of them. However, the man that was told to take the ship into the, he heard, I don't know whether actually somebody told him, so I assume he was told that down in the south there are no ships down there, so you don't have to be on the watch. And that's the one mistake. You're going in the area, you're up here in the water, nothing down there. And that's the one mistake, because there's a ship sitting there. And sunk, it was submarine. And they're watching here. There's nothing to do day in and day out. However, this big ship comes in and suspects that there's no problem. And then they say, oh my God, look at this. So they let 2 shots go and sunk it. Now, there's no reason that should have happened.
Why do you think it happened?
Why did it happen?
Yeah.
because they weren't prepared for it. You gotta be prepared for every goddamn thing that happens. You say, oh no, what are we gonna worry about? That's great. And if you don't prepare for it, then it may not happen. But if you're prepared for it and they know, they'd have probably found out with the radar, over here there's a ship down below. And they do all the work, but nobody looked there. So the sinking of the Indianapolis.
This book is really interesting. It's talking about how the survivors of the Indianapolis knew that their captain was not to blame. That's what this book is about.
Which is what he said, because the captain was given misinformation that there was no enemies in that particular area.
So the Navy needed a scapegoat for this disaster, so it court-martialed the captain for hazarding his ship. The survivors in it knew that the captain was not to blame. For 50 years they worked to clear his name, even after his untimely death. But the Navy would not budge until 11-year-old named Hunter Scott entered the picture. His history, fair project on the internet, soon became a crusade to restore the captain's good name and the honor of the men who served him.
I think when I was here Tuesday, you said when your kids were little, you used to go to the schools and talk a little bit about the war.
Yeah, I went to, not so much our children, but they didn't have, so that our daughter Callie, she's number 3, she asked, they had a program and they wanted to know about this. And so I went to her school, and it was kind of nice. And then when the girl came along, they asked me again, so I went to her.
Oh, good.
And now, of course, she's grown up and everything, but it was, they felt good.
I know my dad was in World War II as well. He was in the Navy, and he didn't talk about it much when we were growing up. He didn't talk. So I really appreciate that you're willing to share, because a lot of times people didn't.
Well, my father never knew that I had a certificate from the Navy. I went to school. Your prompt and efficient act without regard was instrumental in saving a man's life. My father never knew.
I think when I was here on Tuesday, you showed me that that's the picture. You have a picture of yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the picture when you were. I'm not going to take it off the wall because I know, but you.
Take it off.
Are you sure? Because I know we had a little struggle getting it back on, but.
There's no pictures of me in the whole wall. Now, what happened was, on the way back from the war, everybody's sitting around, but one of the men came up to me and said, "You're Shea, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're the pilot?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Would you like to speak to the captain?" I said, "Yeah." So I spoke to the captain.
The captain of which ship?
Huh?
Which ship? The captain of which ship?
No, we're just on the way home.
Oh, okay.
So I don't even know the name of the ship. And I spoke with him, and he said, "You know what? I'd like to to go topside because we're seeing all of a sudden you go and see water shoot up. So the captain said, that may be after or when a war is over. That's one of the things that there's something shoot up and they say, oh, look at that. The first thing you're bombed. So to protect them, he says, I'd like you to go up topside. And so I went up, and there's one man to the left. He said, and all he does, all for 4 hours. And the other man is right beside him, and he does it for 4 hours. So 8 hours they've cleared all the way. And so then a man came up and says, could I take a picture of you? And I said, and he took a picture. He said, thank you. I'll send it to you after a while. And he sent me the picture.
And this is
otherwise,
the
I would never have a picture.
Wow. Well, that's great.
Good thing he was a man of his word.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. How young.
Yeah.
So young. How old were you in that picture? About in your 20s or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably 24.
Wow. Such a huge responsibility for a young person.
Well, everybody's young.
Well, yeah, it's true.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We expected
war.
so much.
Mm-hmm. Still do.
Well, they do show one guy here, and he goes to the left and the other to the right.
And here's some survivors, a picture of 3 survivors after the sinking, kind of bandaged up.
Now, as you see, thin arms.
Thin.
They were so very young when you saved their lives.
Well, those are the guys that grew up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are the survivors that the author of that book interviewed.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or the kid interviewed, Hunter Scott interviewed as well.
Right.
So.
It has come to life now. There's more right now. Your generation, they're more interested in.
Yes. Yeah. I think this generation is more interested than my generation. You know, like I said, my dad never really talked about the war,
Oh,
and I'm fascinated by it now
Yeah,
that
right.
Sydney's asking you questions, and and I think I'm amazed by the level of loyalty and commitment that your generation had to our country.
right.